Well, hello. We are here. We are here to talk Michigan GT. We don't have anybody with us yet because, we're not cool yet. But I'm sure we'll get some people. And if not, you're probably watching this on YouTube a little bit later. But collected a couple guys, Dylan and Jordan, who participated in the Michigan GT this past weekend. Can't believe it. Feels like it was a lot longer ago than that, right? But it was literally like we drove home on Monday, Dylan, and you went home, Jordan, like on Wednesday.
Yep. Left Wednesday. I wasn't even home for 12 hours in Colorado before flying down to Texas for back-to-back vacation time. So I'm
oh my gosh, your
bit.
wife must love you.
You know what? Tried to get the brownie points in. Tried to make sure I put the kids to bed by myself a couple nights, earn those brownie points. But she knew it was coming, and we were visiting her family, so definitely helped with heading out by myself right after.
Yeah,
all right. Well, we're gonna go ahead, Dylan. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say back-to-back vacations. Must be nice.
So we're gonna talk about Michigan GT tonight. It was a great event. It's a little smaller convention in Lansing, Michigan, and let's just dive in the history of Michigan GT. It's been around for, gosh, I want to say 6 years, I think. And the first couple of years they had Kings of War. It was a one-day. And it wasn't held in the convention center that we know it is where it's now. So it was actually on the south side, which is, Dylan, really close to my mom's house, like literally like around the corner. Okay. But it was like in like this little seedy hotel. So, but it was a one day. And so for me to drive up to Michigan for a one day, it was a little harder for me to make that argument. But 4 years ago, they chose to go. Maybe it was 5 years ago, but I know I've been to the last four. And they've all been 2 day. And ever since they moved to the Lansing Center, which is downtown Lansing, it's been awesome. But Dylan, start us off how did the Michigan GT get on your radar? Because you've been to 2 of these now.
Yeah. So, I had seen, snippets of it posted in Countercharge by you. And I'm in basically all the groups. So I see events from all over popping up. But good old Rob here asked me to go a couple years ago, and so that was my first one, was 2022, and I went up north and I just wreaked havoc, and I even dug something out of the box. I have this.
Oh my gosh, Michigan! Did you buy that, or was that an award?
Best general.
Baby. Oh, look at that. Best general. So let's cut to the foreshadowing a little bit. You didn't win best general this time. What's up, bro?
No, I just,
you stunk it up.
I just didn't watch all the film that I needed. I just didn't prepare, you know what I mean? So the other team came out on the field and was just ready. So
yeah. Well, you were retired, so but Jordan, how about you? How did Michigan GT end up on your radar?
It ended up on my radar actually last year. Was initially looking at going in 2023, but noticed it too late. We had already been, my sister-in-law had already moved out to Michigan, and we were thinking, man, let's see if we can make both work. And I found it was I think it was in October of last year, maybe it was end of September still, but
no, I think you're right. It usually is early October.
Yeah, and I think I had found it the week before, and so way too late to book a whole vacation at that point, because whole point of going out to Michigan was first to see the family, but second for me was to sneak in a couple days at the Michigan GT and have some fun. So found a way to really make sure that it worked out, and it was fun. We got to see family before and after, kind of sandwiched it, and have fun at the event.
Yeah, it's funny because 4 years ago I went with our buddy Andrew Atkins. We call him the Mountain. And when you meet him, Jordan, you'll know why we call him the Mountain. Yeah, he's a big guy. And then the following year, Dylan, you and I went in 2022, and then in 2023, I went up there with Andy and Jeff locally, and then this year it was back to Dylan. So I don't know if next year, Dylan, maybe we get everybody. Maybe we get Andrew and Jeff and Andy and maybe even Andrew, because he's retired too, right? He's not playing Kings of War anymore.
I've been trying to get him back in. He's just working all the time, so we'll see.
Yeah. So the venue, right? So the venue is in the Lansing Center. It's pretty awesome. It's right downtown Lansing, and people go, "Oh, Michigan!" Like they don't really know what to expect. And we get into that situation where people are like, "Oh, it's the Lower Peninsula. It's right here." The hands, right? So you got the upper hand, the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula, and we call it Mid Michigan because it's really pretty far south in the grand scheme of things of the Lower Peninsula. But it's a cool place. And if it's the first time there, you're only a couple blocks away from the capital, and it's not a huge city. I mean, the population's maybe a little over 100,000 people. It's probably 100,000 when I grew up there, so I can't imagine it's much more now. But it's a fun place. We're right on the river, which is the Grand River that kind of goes right down the middle of Lansing. And you guys probably noticed it. It's kind of a hipster atmosphere now, where they've like taken like existing power plants and converted them into like community spaces and lofts and communal areas, and so it's pretty fun. I don't know what do you guys. I mean, this is your second time, Dylan, your first time, Jordan. But what'd you think of the downtown Lansing area?
It's a nice town for sure. There's a lot of stuff to do. I know Jordan will be able to speak more because I think he had family with him that was out doing things while he was playing games. But there's no shortage of places to see and things to go do in Lansing.
Yeah, there was definitely some miscommunication from our end because Friday night they were right at that Innovation Children's play place and didn't know. And we're across the street, and my sister-in-law was like, "I'm pretty sure he's across the street," and no one called or texted.
Impression 5, right?
That's literally could have walked over.
They were at the Impression. Yeah, the Impression 5 museum is like, my daughter's too cool for that now. But man, if she would say let's go, I'd go tomorrow. It's such a fun place. It's got a lot of great entertaining. It's full of activities, as they would say.
Oh yeah, and then on what was it, Saturday or was it Sunday, that they had the big old marathon where people are running over the river? I think
it was Sunday, right? It was Sunday, right? Yeah, I'm not about to run a half marathon, guys, but I'll applaud them for making it. The other thing I do want to mention is that a lot of great restaurants right in the area. I mean, just tons of great restaurants. They have the Nut House, and people are like, Nut House. Well, right across the street from the Nut House is where the Lansing Lug Nuts play, which is a single A baseball team. I have no idea what professional team they're attached with, but next door they have the Nut House. It was good food. It was. I mean, every year I go, I'm just so happy about the venue and the food and the parking, like all the stuff that I complain about with Adepticon, or some of the bigger or Nova. Like I don't complain with this because they've it's a smaller convention and it feels like it. So in terms of overall impressions, though, I would say the one negative is it was pricey. I don't remember the exact price, but $90 maybe or something. It was on the price, maybe $80. It was on the pricey side.
Yeah, I was $100 in between Firefight and Kings of War. I think Kings was $80, Firefight was $20. So definitely, I was a little surprised actually because I'm newer to tournament scenes as a whole, and I was a little shocked at $80. Yeah,
that's a little high. That's a little high for an event of its size. Typically, in a conventions are usually more expensive. Adepticon, very expensive, both from time and money. And I'm a little bit surprised though when you have a convention like that, if you're trying to grow a community or trying to grow a scene, usually they would let some of the bigger crowds subsidize it. Like the 40K guys had 150 players at least. So I was really surprised that $80 or whatever it was for Kings of War, and I'm sure that had a negative effect on maybe the locals that because there probably were locals that would have came and played, but they're like, well, I'm not gonna, and maybe not just locals, but just people in general. They were like, oh, that's a bit pricey. But I think though maybe it made up for it on the cost of food because having just come from Nova in Washington D.C. where we were they wanted us to pay $8 for a little bottle of water. The fact that the food that if you did eat at the venue, it wasn't that expensive. It was $5 or $6 for like a slice of pizza and a Coke and fries.
I think 11 got you.
It wasn't terrible.
Fries and a water. It wasn't terrible.
It's like
for $11.
Yeah.
So it'd be
exactly.
Like,
yeah. So the food price at the venue was fine. I thought that was awesome. And it looked like, I don't know if you guys noticed it looked like, well, you wouldn't have a frame reference short, but it felt like the attendance was up, and several people said it was. And when I walked around, there was a lot more people playing a lot of the smaller games that we wouldn't necessarily see. Like they had a bunch of BattleTech guys there. So, I mean, it looked like it was a full crowd. So that was pretty cool. I don't know. What were you guys' thoughts about attendance and what you saw at the event?
I would say, as someone, again, who's newer to the tournament scene, 16 players felt like, an average amount to me. It was interesting. We went as part of kind of going around. I was in Howell, Michigan area. I found a store called the Upkeep Games. If anyone's in Michigan, what an incredible shop.
So I'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah.
But incredible shop owners. They have even a buy sell 40K shelving and stuff. And what was shocking to me is, Howell's kind of between Detroit and Lansing, and they said that they have tournaments every 6 weeks. And so up to this point, I'm thinking, okay, 16 people, good amount. They said they have 35 players every 6 weeks showing up for 40K tournaments. So at that point, I was like, maybe our numbers, were a little on the small side for Kings of War.
Yeah. Dylan, what are your thoughts on the size of the tournament and stuff? You've got some, I mean, I know you've been retired for a couple of years, but I'm sure you have some feedback.
Well, I mean, that year I went, we had 2 rows of tables, and it was even bigger the last year, and like it had grown every year basically since I've been. It was what I had seen or heard. And then this year it was, I think it was more to do with the timing, being only a few weeks out from Masters, that being such a, heavy handed on the pocketbook, go where it was located, it being at a, big major convention, $8 bottles of water all weekend. So people were probably, strapped, but I mean, it was a good event. The overall event, I didn't know you mentioned that the overall event had grown, had attendance was up. So that's awesome. I mean, that's good for Michigan GT as a whole for sure.
Yeah. I think you hit on a couple things there. I think that the fact that we were only a couple weeks removed from Masters, which was fairly expensive in the grand scheme of things, definitely we had players that were at Masters that would have normally been in Michigan GT that didn't come. Donnie Croce would be one, right? A lot of the Minnesota guys. I mean, the only Minnesota guy we had this year was Jesse Berglund, who flew in. But like last year, we had, I mean, over the years, we've had maybe up to 10 different players from Minnesota. So there's that. I think also Michigan GT in the past has been a little later, like more in October. And so I don't know how that, having it come in a little bit, I don't know if it didn't overlap with people's like family, like out of school sessions, like fall breaks or maybe other tournaments. So maybe there's that. But the reality is, last year we were mid-30s last year, and we really that's where we expect to be. We were about half that size, and I think mostly that's due to all the things that were kind of out of their control, right? I mean, it's expensive. They moved the date up. It's like a few weeks after Masters, but a week before, this weekend is the Crossroads GT. So like Andy, who went last year, totally would have come this year, but he's like, I'm driving to upstate New York, the following week. So either way, I think 16 players we had was a great mix. We had some really good players. We had some mid-table warriors. So it was still a really, really, really fun event,
Absolutely.
So I think the one thing that Yeah, I think the one thing that was a huge disappointment, and I can't wait to see Dylan's face, but man, there was like, how many vendors were there? Not very many.
4, maybe.
There was,
Yeah, it wasn't very
I
many.
think there was 5 if you count the candy guy out in the hallway. Like,
Yeah.
it was.
Well, and the
nothing
biggest
like
one was there was no Mantic. No Mantic. You know, we've had a Mantic booth there every single year, but this year it was like, guys, come on, man.
I had,
You know, it's like 2
Well,
steps
mine
forward,
is
1
wrong.
step back.
yeah, I had
Pardon?
I had planned on, buying some stuff from that.
But
booth,
you know,
but
yeah, Dylan, though, you had a plan to get something, right? And Karma was with the Arkansas picker. I mean, you still got what you wanted, just in a different way, right?
Yep. Oh yeah.
You want to share that story?
Well, so so I had been out of the game for a couple of years, and when I decided to get back into the game, I could find my terrain, but I couldn't find my game mat. So I was like, you know what? I won't stress about it. I'm going to Michigan GT in a few weeks. There will be one up there because there was a huge selection last time.
Gray Matter Games usually there. Yep.
Yeah, and so I was like, no sweat. And I get up there and I walk in. There's like no vendors, and that's the first thing I did when we walked in. Friday night. So I walked around. I looked at all. And I was like, I got to get a game at. Where's their game at? And they didn't have any. So, but War Room Hobbies had you boys back. I rode back home with Rob, and then picked my vehicle up there to drive back to Arkansas, and I stopped at the game shop on my way, and he hooked me up.
Yeah, nothing like getting a used mat for $35, dude. That was a heck of a steal.
It was,
so.
yeah, and it's like perfectly fine. It's like it may have a couple little ripples in it, but
exactly. Well, let's talk about the events. So, obviously we all played in the Kings of War event, and Jordan played in Firefight. But on Friday they had Armada and they had Firefight, and then Kings of War was Saturday, Sunday, and they had Den Zone as well on Saturday. In terms of Armada, I know they only had 4 players. Fridays are always a difficult thing. Armada is fantasy driven, so that's why it's not always going to be the big. But the Michigan crowd shows up for science fiction stuff. So like Dead Zone, Firefight, that's their jam. And so, let me big shout out to our science fiction TO. So this is Brian Novak from Dead Zone, the podcast. He ran, I believe he ran Firefight and Dead Zone. So huge shout out to him. And back to what you're talking about, Upkeep Games, that is Brian's store. So he doesn't own it. That's his store he plays at, because he may have to correct me on this, but I believe he lives in Howell. So, which, as you said, is just like halfway between 96. So it's a great store, and he posts lots of pictures on the Southeast Michigan Discord. What's a mouthful? But yeah, lots of great events there. But so Firefight was 1,250 points. They played 3 games. They had 8 players, which isn't bad for a Friday night thing. But I don't know, Jordan. I'll flash some pictures up. Do you want to kind of share your experience with Dead Zone?
Yeah,
excuse me, Firefight.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great. Brian is awesome. Ran both events real smooth. Firefight is interesting. I feel like it's really designed to play quick, but when you're a tournament, you're making more decisions. It's interesting. Firefight can get bogged down quick. So I would say the only challenge that we faced in the tournament was people getting into turns 4 and 5 in the allotted time that we had. And so no fault of Brian at all, just people not playing fast enough. And so 1,250 is really interesting with Firefight because it forces a lot of challenges in a good way. I think Firefight plays best between 1,500 to 2,000. I think at 1,500 you start getting some of the toys. At 2,000 you really see an army's full capabilities. You see what they bring to the table and what makes that army itself. But now you're committing to a 3-hour game, so definitely not always the case. And I mean, Kings of War, right? Even 65-minute timers per person. So totally different, but really fun. I had some great people. Some were completely new to firefight and were getting in some of their first games. My second opponent in round 2, Chris June, was incredible. He played Enforcers, had a blast. But really friendly community, really people who were there to have fun and either learn the game. And firefights just made in a way where the rules are pretty straightforward. Like there's not a lot of questions. It's just like Kings where you don't really need to get out the rule book to play. And so total blast. Came in second place. And do you want me to break through each round real quick? Kind of go over decision making.
Yeah.
Sweet.
It's super. Yeah.
So round 1, I had never played against Veermen on the table before, so that was fun. I knew with their subterranean deployment, a lot of challenges. So those who are in the firefight, essentially the rats, they can come out from underground. It's called subterranean deployment. And so you'll see in that picture there, I really tried to make sure in my back line there, really no friendly subterranean deployment for Aaron, who was my opponent, and really tried to make sure that he was forced to push out. Oh, sorry, that picture's a plague. Sorry, but
right. That's did you play Justin Wickman? Is that Justin Wickman?
With Justin, you got it. Yep.
Yeah.
But he just really tried to make it was bodyguards. So each you had to pick 2 units to have a token, and if you destroyed the token, it was worth a bunch of EP. So I had some skyscrapers, and obviously the decision is: do you hold back and do an aerial deployment, do you put it on, and then get a scout move? And I said, you know what? I held him back to where they were an additional deployment, and he put a token on a unit that was right in front. And so I set those guys down, got the scout move, and just charged right in and demolished the unit. And that probably was pretty shocking out the gate to see a 10 VP score from eliminating the token in combat right out the gate. So from there, it was really just mitigating. But he almost got me at a surprise where he came out. I had to move something out of the way, and it was he took advantage of it. And I actually won a combat I probably shouldn't have. It was the unit that had the token. So that's what really saved the game at that point, because he had begun moving his token forward. But really fun. Vermen's a fantastic army. Round 2, met Chris June. Chris is newer to the game, big GW player. I think he's even a part-time employee for GW. So it was really fun to see him at the tournament. He was a really fun Enforcer army. We were playing manpower, so it's controlling different objectives. And part of that was he put some dudes in the building. I had a lot of strong deployment where I was able to kind of start leapfrogging and pushing him into a corner of the board that just totally let me take over. So a lot of fun, great opponent. Dude is just very enthusiastic. In fact, he actually won the Sportsman Award. So really, really fun with that. And as part of that, though, Enforcers are really challenging. So they have the Strider units. They have their Peacekeepers, which essentially, if you're familiar with 40K, translate to Terminators. Really tough to get off the board. But he had a moment where he actually brought his leader out too far and was able to jump the leader, remove that, and kind of create some chaos. Got into round 3, and Justin had an incredible plague army, 120 zombies, like 2 units of 14 ghouls, a bunch of leaper units spread out, and it was a lot. And my Marauder army was not cut out to shoot that much, to take that many numbers off. I was not cut out to even combat that much in a 1250 army. And so really just had to deal with the zombies coming forward, dealing what I can. And even though it was control, I started putting pressure behind them with dropping the skyscrapers, doing a few other stuff. But overall, that was a lot to deal with. And so great victory for Justin, and really tried to put the pressure where I can, but that's a lot of zombies. So, but really fun. Like I said, Brian is just very fun. I had a moment where I think I sat for 5 minutes with him to hop on his Dead Zone, the podcast, for a little bit.
Yeah.
A couple stuff for it. But really, really fun event. Again, just more events like this are really going to help Firefight take place. I really believe that Firefight, there's a reason it won the best. Was it 2022? It was given the best game award.
Yeah, on tabletop.
And I think Mansion just needs to run with that. It's an incredible game. It's very it's streamlined. The rules match so much in other games that Mantic has, the sharing of key words to what they do in the game. And so if you're anything even remote interested in sci-fi, incredible game. It plays well small, it plays well big. So kind of tailor it to what you need from the game.
Yeah, and shout out to Justin Wickman. I finally got to meet him in person. He's been doing an amazing job with Amazon Labs Army as part of the slow grow. And he took out first. And shout out to Jordan. I mean, you coming in there like a barnstormer and taking out first. Take first in paint and second in overall. I mean, just crushing it. Dylan, did you see that army? His army? Did you see Jordan's the goblins? Oh my god, dude.
His Marauders.
The Marauders, yeah.
Sorry, they're not goblins. They're Marauders. I know.
They're greenskins, man.
They're greenskins.
So
amazing stuff.
It was actually a ballsy moment for me in the sense that I'd only had one game prior with the Marauders, and I've sunk a lot of hours of paint. And so it was a moment of like, I hope I've painted an army I enjoy playing, because this has been a lot of hours. So I usually have a pretty, secure model where I either play test an army or get some stuff into it more before I sink that amount of hours. But I just love greenskins. I think they're a ton of fun. I think the models are fun for Mantic. And I said, you know what? We're just going to do it. We're going to go for it.
That's awesome.
So paid off. But
paid off, yeah. So we'll shout out to Justin Wickman. Go ahead, Dylan. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, it did pay off. That stuff looks great.
Thank you. And I apologize if you guys see me bumping my nose here. I'm a bit under the weather.
Oh, that's all right.
I apologize.
So shout out to Justin Wickman. It's nice to meet you. The Maison Labs you got is awesome. He won the firefight event with Plague. He may have won it a couple of years. Like I know that's like they only play the sci-fi games, and they're from Wisconsin. And so Jordan, you came in second with your Marauders, and then Adam Kinney came in third with Asterion. Did you get a chance to meet Adam?
I kind of encountered him a little bit, but never got the opportunity to sit down with him, unfortunately. I think he was playing Dead Zone the following day when we had started the Kings.
He's a hardcore Dead Zone guy for sure. He's a great guy, though. I played him at Kings of War at Adepticon a couple years ago. But sci-fi is his main squeeze. And then we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Jordan with his beautiful Marauders won Best Painted, and Christopher June and his Enforcer Army won Best Sports. So that was Firefight Friday night. And then, Saturday we had Kings of War. But before we get to Kings of War, let's talk a little Dead Zone. So first of all, they had 10 players, which is awesome. And they played 175 points in 3 games. But these tables were so cool. I mean, really, really cool stuff. This one really jumped out at me. I mean, it's so vibrant. The red, the blue, the orange. It just really, really, really jumped out at me. And this is awesome. Is like a spaceport. I mean, that is just super cool. I mean, and it's a mix. You might be able to tell it's a mix of 3D printed stuff with some cardboard pieces as well. So again, I think this is all Brian's personal terrain collection, because he is hardcore. And shout out to Brian Novak. If you haven't listened to it, Dead Zone, the podcast, it's been around a long time. Brian and Rick Hall, who now works for Mantic, who's probably no longer going to be on the podcast. But Brian, if you're listening, it could probably be an upgrade, right? You could probably, you could probably get like a superstar. Maybe Adam Kinney could be on your show. I mean, he's all about Dead Zone. So, use it as it's an opportunity. It's not a setback. It's an opportunity. But these tables were awesome. These tables were awesome.
And what I love about Dead Zone, so Dead Zone for me was my entry game into Mantic game. And that's how I met Tyler Schultz as well. And this right here is a perfect example that you don't even have to use the Mantic terrain. As long as it's the same 3-inch cube, it's the 3 inches high or so. And I mean, you can create entire different worlds, and it plays well really thick and lots of highs and lows. It plays well with scattered terrain, a little more open. Like, it just plays well however you see fit. And the game is just the movement cheating where you can slide outside of the cube as long as 50% or more of you is in the cube. Just the game is incredible. The quickness of play. I mean, you can set up, play, and take down in an hour and 15 minutes. And there's so few games out there that are like it in that sense.
And this is so awesome because I actually have never seen a game of Dead Zone that's played on like a natural board. It's mostly like that hard sci-fi, or post-apocalyptic. It's like this rundown town, or it's something out of Blade Runner. And this is just something completely caught me off guard, and it's super cool. I mean, this is the classic. When you think of Dead Zone, that's the classic, right?
Yep.
Which is the Yeah, which is the actual Dead Zone terrain. But I mean, it's just I have not played a lot of Dead Zone, but I do enjoy it. And that these pictures and watching the people play really have me interested to, Halo's coming soon. So I'm really, really excited about Halo. And this one, I love the sign, right? So League 3 in a night. I'm assuming it's a reference to Dreadball. But just, I mean, it's just so, and look at this. I mean, we got to learn something here. That is branding right there. I mean, you have a tape measure that says Dead Zone the podcast right there. Or actually, that's a speaker, isn't it? I think that's a speaker.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, he was wearing his shirt all weekend. He had headphones around his neck that had Dead Zone the podcast, and
amazing.
He's like, "Hey, I'm Brandon full time, baby." I thought it was very clever of him.
Yeah. So yeah, and this is on our shot of that valley, I guess. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's just super cool. But yeah, big fan of Dead Zone. I was super pumped that they had 10 players. And if we look at the stats, Adam Kinney, no surprise. I think he's won. Tyler thinks he's pretty good, but let's be honest, he's not as good as Adam. He's not listening to this though, Jordan, so it's okay. But then Justin
Tyler's
Wickman,
gonna have to go defend the throne apparently next year.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll get Tyler
Justin,
to go up with me.
I don't understand why he didn't come. I said if you came, I would have a bed for you. You could sleep in the same room as Dylan. You like Dylan. It'd be a nice place. You'd have a steak and egg breakfast. I mean, but he turned me down. So, that's okay. But yeah, so Adam pulled out the win in Dead Zone, and then we got Justin Wickman, who won the firefight, came in second. And then third place was Eric. And I should mention it was Veerman first, Plague in second, and Plague in third, and Plague in fourth. And
Plague
the
is
best
strong in Dead Zone.
Plague is strong.
They bring a lot of tools, and they have big nasties, and they come right for you. So,
well, and Scott Schlichter must be the soft score king because he won both best painted and best sports. So with his Asterion. So Scott,
they were
Scott
pretty.
Came, they were pretty. Scott came to Kings of War 4 years ago, and I think he had a rough go because Kings of War is a game. There's a lot, the burden to get all that stuff painted, get it to the table, and so I think after that he was like, I think maybe more Dead Zone is my speed. So that's fine, Scott. We still love you. If you want to play Kings of War, we'll welcome back to the warm embrace. We'll have you. So, well, let's get in and let's talk about the fun stuff that we wanted to really chat about, which is our passion here, which is Kings of War. And it was 2,300 points, 5 games. And we had, as we said, 16 players. And, we had a 2,300 point list, but we all got these, they call it Chariot X, but it's basically a free chariot. And Jordan, maybe this is your first time you were at this event. And what were your thoughts on the chariot?
I think it's fun. I think it's really interesting that this was something that was totally foreign to me, was every event kind of has their own little person, whether it's a chariot, Lone Wolf has the wolf guys, just different tournaments have their little flavor that they bring to the table. And it was interesting from the standpoint of even how to use it during the 5 games that were there. It was like, well, is this a free thing? And I'm just going to throw it away and let it be chaff? Or is it going to be, because there was one round that was really focused on it. The chariot had to pick up a flag, and that was pretty cool. But it was really interesting in the sense that it was like, oh, wait, like this is now kill points. So it was definitely a fun aspect to it. At the hobby side, I had a blast putting together a totally, ogre chariot wagon that had big flames coming off it and spinning chromed out wheels. It was a blast, but it was definitely different in the sense that, as someone who, is starting to, has a whole different view of Kings post tournament, because for me, that was games like 8 through 12 period, all time for Kings for me getting into it, and totally coming out with like eyes open, light bulb on moment. It's interesting that as you would prepare for an event, you have your list, how to run it, how to do things, and really something like a chariot could be quick or other things. And I know, Rob, there was like 3 or 4 different modes of the chariot. You could take some made it fly, some made it faster, some made it slower, but it had other things. And so such an interesting variable to what you could say, oh, I've play tested this list and I've done X, Y, and Z. It's now a totally random variable to potentially throw you off.
Yeah, there's 4 versions of the chariot. One's called Speed Racer, and it gives you another pip of speed, and you gain Wild Charge 1 in Pathfinder. Then there was Demolition Derby, which your chariot improves to 6 attacks and gains Elite, Vicious, and Brutal. And then there was Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Your chariot decreases to speed 7 from 8 and gains the Fly and Inspiring special rule, which is pretty cool. And then they had Ensorcelled Chrome, which is instead of Lightning Bolt 3 spell, your chariot has speed 7 and Wind Blast 5 and Surge 5. Its spellcaster level increases to 1 and it gains Inspiring. So we should mention the base stats are height 3, speed 8, melee 3, defense 5, attacks 5, unit strength 1, and nerve fearless 14, with crushing strength 1, thunder charge 1, inspiring self, and nimble. So, and then the other big thing they had these tricks you could do, and there was 3 of them. One is called Spray Gravel. Essentially, you gave Aura Phalanx. Then you had Belch Smoke, which was Aura Stealthy, and Rev the Demon, which is Aura Spell Ward. And you can do one of those once per game. It's funny though, as we talk about our games, like I didn't use any of that until the last game. Like I sort of was so concentrated on the game, I didn't even think about the chariot, other than it was just a unit strength piece running around the table. So I don't know. I ended up using the demolition one just to give myself a little bit more impact. But which one did you use, Jordan?
I did the Speedster one, the one that gave it the extra
Speed Racer. Yeah, really
Speed
cool.
Racer.
I've used that one in the past. Speed 9 with Wild Charge 1. So you're looking at 19 19 charge with Pathfinder. Pretty tasty. Yep. And Dylan, you probably took the flyer one, huh? Because you look like that kind of guy.
No, I took Demolition Derby.
Okay.
My list doesn't have a lot of melee output, so I took that for the extra attack with the brutal and the elite, the vicious. It's pretty good.
Well, on that note, why don't we talk about lists? And I'm going to pull up Dylan's list. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Make it a little easier. So you played the bullcrap, right? Am I reading this right? Does this actually say Sylvan Kin?
No, it's not bull. I mean,
it's not bullcrap. Okay,
it's the weakest.
Right.
It's the weakest army in the game right now. So
until Clash of Kings drops, right?
And then it's
mediocre.
It loses some things, it gains some things. So, but yeah, we got we're gonna go through it. We got a regiment of Kindred Warriors. They got the Warbow with Kava because they're elves. They need to be able to shoot. I got 3 regiments of Glade Stalkers. This Sylvan, so we melee on 4, but we are stealthy, so pretty clutch. 2 hordes of Forest Shamblers. One of those is upgraded to Awakened Guardians. That way my Glade Stalkers can be 15-17 like God intended. We have a regiment of Stormwind Cavalry.
Man, wouldn't that be awesome if that unit unlocked?
It would be great. Epic foreshadowing. So I put the Quicksilver Lancers on them, and they lost the ability to take their unique upgrade with their Pathfinder upgrade. So we just counter that a little bit by Sir Jesse's Boots of Striding. We have the Greater Air Elemental.
I thought you said these weren't any good because they only had 8 attacks. Why are you taking it? You're messing with, is it like is it one of those like Bugs Bunny thing, like duck season, rabbit season, you're trying to trick us?
I think it's in a good spot where, like 2nd edition, where you could take one. He's no longer good enough to take 3 of. But and then here's the spice. We got 3 kings. They're all wanderers, and they all have bows. And I have the Shard Blade on 1, so 2 up attacks. And then I have Axe of the Giant Slayer, so I get extra D3 attacks and melee and range. And then I have Scythe of the Harvester, which is also extra D3 attacks, melee and ranged. And so I have options to hit monsters harder and infantry harder. And then the Wilt Father. Yeah. I thought it was missing, but I had the Forest Warden with the Trickster's Wand and the Wilt Father. The Trickster's Wand, Hex is so good. Hex is so good. But yeah, that's the list.
What were your thoughts kind of going in with this list?
I didn't have any. I mean, this is the army that I had in 2022, so it's almost exactly the same, except instead of in 2022 I had 3 tree herders, and so I pivoted a little bit. Instead of 3 tree herders, I had 3 kings and some extra shamblers, but basically the rest of the list is the same. Yeah, I wish I would have brought the 3 tree herders. The 3 kings is cool, but it's like the 7 attacks with the items. It was not even close to being as impactful as 3 tree herders. So,
it's funny because you used to lecture me about don't take individuals because they don't have unit strength, and here you are, just like all these points sunk into nothing that's giving you no unit strength. You don't even listen to yourself. That's how bad this is.
Yeah. I was just trying to. So the big part of it was I wanted a reason to paint a couple. I had a couple individuals that I wanted to paint for that army, and so I painted 2 fresh models to take with me. But the rest of it was kind of old and dusty. It's been sitting in storage for 2 years.
Oh, we know. We saw it.
Yeah.
We saw it. We know.
Yeah. But
well, let's bring up. Go ahead. Yeah. We'll bring up Jordan's list now because it's a real man's list. Got ogres. So walk us through the list, Jordan.
Yeah, so rookie time putting Kings of War list together, but I try. So no, it was I knew siege breakers were a really good solid part of the ogre army. I knew hunters would be key with the Pathfinder and making sure that you're getting through stuff, charge except for obstacles and not being hindered. The mammoth just looked like a good time to me, and giving brutal to something within the aura of it is incredible. I think in the metas that we're seeing with shooting, I thought that the Boomer Chariot was a pretty much essential. Apparently, we had the wrong size chariot for 3 of the 5 games or something.
Yeah, you had a regiment, and I thought you took the normal thing that most people take, which is the troop. But luckily, I had just brought the whole collection, so we were able to swap it out. And
I don't think it made a lick of difference. For the
no,
first
it probably
games,
didn't. It probably didn't, honestly.
No. So I'm not even going to worry about it. But it was pretty funny that people are like, "You're denying yourself like an extra inch of aura space there."
Or no more than
an
inch.
I hadn't taken the horn either, so I didn't have the 9 inches.
Yeah,
so
no, that's
really
like an extra. That's like an extra inch in both directions. Because if you're down a chariot, which is 50 millimeters wide, that's almost 2 inches, right?
Yep.
So
but that's okay. I don't think that was a factor, and I thought 2 blasters would be a blast. Pun intended. And then I had the Berserker Bully, the Ogre Warlock, battery essentially with the 2 Warlocks and Nom Nom. So really fun list. I think pretty standard as far as we see with Ogres. And my goal was this, that, it was already a list that I hadn't really played. It was an army I hadn't really played. And so I thought, it's pretty standard. People know what it is. And worst case, like, as I go throughout the tournament, that means the bites that people have will apply. It means that it's pretty straightforward of how to maneuver the army and how to run the army. So my goal really was, hey, let's get 5 more games of Kings in, and let's see what happens with it and learn from it. And it was good. Ogres are super solid. I think that as a new player, it has positives and negatives, right? Positives is it's pretty straightforward in what you're doing. I think negatives are a lot of people know how to deal with ogres at this point because we're seeing ogres so frequently. And the other downside would be it's lower on the drop count potentially. I think what's the average 14, 15 drops? And I think most ogre lists are like 11, 12. If I have extra because of the Goblin Blasters, but a standard ogre list is a little bit lower on the drop count. So you have to be more careful. You can't just lose a unit. You have to be much more careful.
Yeah, and I thought you had a more fun list than we would typically see with ogres. I mean, you didn't have the 3 sergeants, you didn't have 3 warlocks. You know, you had a bully, you had a couple warlocks and nom noms, so it was cool, right? I like it. And look, I like the mammoth. I know it may you on paper it might not be the most effective thing because he's what Crush 2, Thunder 2 with
Yep.
Rampage, and sometimes like with that kind of crushing and thunder power, like you really want to be hitting big stuff that has more defense 6. But I think there's a place for Rampage in an ogre army, right? Because you already have 3 hordes of siege breakers that can, with crushing 2, that can tie up some of the bigger bad mamma jammas. So
Totally.
it was a cool list. It was a cool list. Well, I've got my list, and I think I mentioned on probably a podcast or two that I have been running salamanders for a long time, and you just from time to time just have to take something different. So I dusted off the Kingdoms of Half Men, and basically I wasn't going to paint anything that basically for this event I wasn't going to paint anything new. So it had to be what I already had, which meant no Beast Cavalry. Which if you're playing Kingdoms of Men nowadays, you really need to be rocking those not Dracons. But yeah, so I had a regiment and a horde of the Spear Phalanx. So that's Ensnare and Phalanx, which is pretty good. I should say they're Pike, right? That's what they are. And the horde had the Hammer Avenger Force, which came in. Well, you'll hear a few times about it. All I played on day one was Defense 6. And I'll share that in a minute, but it was quite the thing. And by the way, spoiler, I didn't do very well on day one. So then I had Foot Guard, 2 regiments. Historically, I had been running a horde, but I really like having a couple smaller regiments, and one's got the Orb of Towering Presence. So for unit strength 4, they're defense 5. They don't hit. They're not there to hit. They're just there to be a grindy, try to get through them. In retrospect, I don't know if I probably could have just made him shield wall and saved the points and maybe put the points somewhere else. But hey, you learn. Then I have my favorite thing in the army, which is 2 hordes of militia mob. They don't unlock, but 105 points for 3 unit strength. It's great.
Broken.
Like, yeah, I mean they're awesome, right? I mean defense 3, but I don't care. Like if I need to use them as a human meat shield, that's what they're going to be used as. If they're going to sit back holding a couple tokens with that horde base, great. And then prevalent like the common wisdom did not play into my list. I do have 2 regiments of knights. Nobody takes knights, but except for me, I guess. And I don't normally take Indomitable Will on my army. In my army, I usually have plenty of sources of inspiring. But this was an army that I was going to take as many units, as much unit strength as I could probably get in there and still be effective. So I only had 2 sources of inspiring. So I went ahead and spent the 20 points to give them Indomitable Will, figuring they're going to be out on doing their own thing, right? So the ability to mitigate a waiver or to pop inspiring. I need to get it tattooed on my hand to remind myself that, hey, you're in trouble here. You should probably pop Indomitable Will so you're self-inspiring for next turn. Because I didn't do that. And I lost them like 3 games where, like, I don't know that they would have survived, but at least making them re-roll the damn dice. So, but one has Helm of the Drunken Ram, which I have to, given the thing is modeled up with the basically the pub of the Drunken Ram. So you sort of have to have that item. And then the other one I gave Bruce Strength. They were great. They really were great, but they hit a lot of defense 6 and or phalanx. So it was rough. And then I brought my siege artillery, right? So this is where it's interesting. I went round and round and round with like, what did I want to bring? And I just finally said, well, what is it modeled as? So that's what I'm going to bring. So I have an actual siege artillery, which is a halfling loading a big, a siege gun, right? Or a siege. It looks like a mortar, really. And then I have a ballista, a little ballista with a halfman. But then I have an ogre carrying a cannon. So obviously he's got to be a cannon. And I have an ogre with a couple pistols. That is another. And so I figured the closest thing that I could approximate is a ballista. So that's what I ran. Andy was berating me. He's like, you need to take cannons. You need to take cannons. You need to take cannons. And I'm like, okay, I know they have secured objective, but they're 100 points and they don't mitigate they mitigate concealed cover, but that never hardly comes up. In retrospect, I would have been better off. I usually just play with 3 siege artillery. They have nor obscured, and you just lob them. If you're tall, I just put them. I put them behind my own units. You can't see them, and I just lob them. The ballistas are nice though. We're hitting on 4s, but you're all mostly taking cover. But if you are cover and stealthy, funny story. Last night I played the new Rack and Ruin. It's a new progressive scoring scenario with my buddy Taylor, and he's playing Night Stalkers, which is not what this. I play this army, not what you want to see. I sniped a planar apparition with these guys last night. I was pretty stoked. I was like, because I was hitting on 6s like across the board. Just cover, stealthy. So I mean, it can be done. It's just not commonly going to be done. And then I had 2 giants because you got to. And with crushing strength 4, you really have to have it in Slayer, right? You got to take Slayer, and that's the list. And what's interesting is 31 unit strength, so 16 drops, but 31 unit strength is a little bit of chaff, just a lot of bodies. So I had fun. It was a good time. But maybe let's I'll switch over here. Let's take some. I got some pictures of some of the games that were going on, and maybe what we can do is I've got some pictures, and maybe we can just chat about the highlights from the different games. And I'll kick us off. Game 1, I played Jeff Franz. He challenged me, and he had Twilight Kins, but he had a weird Twilight Kin list. Didn't really lean into the weakness in the Summer Crones, but he did have 4 hordes of Impalers with big shield. So I'm just like, oh God, Christmas. Long story short, it didn't go well, right? I mean, I punched him pretty good, but he has enough units. He has the ability he did have a lot of stealthy, so I wasn't really able to do much with the guns. And to be honest with you, he outplayed me. So we were playing, was it Pillage in the first round, Dylan? I think. Yeah, it was Pillage. Yep. And so I was able to, basically he outplayed me. There was 4 tokens to the left and then like 1 to the right. And I put too much stuff over to the right, thinking I'm going to punch him and then be able to get over to the left. That did not occur. So he was able to win 3-2. Dylan, what was your round 1? Because you had a match too, right? You had a grudge.
Yeah, my round 1 was against the ogre list. Kyle Ritchie was running his ogres, and I did a lot of things. I did a lot of things right in that game. This was kind of my scrape off the rust game, and the major thing that I did wrong was I didn't play my nimble knight regiment very well, and so I ended up taking like front charges that really a speed 9 nimble unit should never be doing, and so that was one of the dominoes that caused me to lose the game. But it was kind of the way we put our objectives out, it was kind of a scrum in the middle. And I have no real crushing strength, and he had the 3 hordes of siege breakers. So I killed
Dylan, I hear excuses. We don't do excuses. We do results.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, I killed a lot of his stuff, but I just couldn't quite take off those siege breakers to get to those last couple objectives, and he got me.
Well, let's go start over to Jordan. How'd your game 1 go? Who'd you play?
Yeah, I played Grace Patterson and her Order of the Green Lady army with that one best painted with all the.
Is this a picture of that you snapped?
That is a picture of it. Yep.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely, and that
was. I don't want to be the one to point out, but your mammoth's facing the wrong way, bro.
Well, it was going to impale the ogres in front of it, so it was better.
I understand. That's that's a professional problem with the mammoth with the big tusks. They're and you probably noticed they've been broken a number of times. So how'd your game
go? Rob was kind enough, for those who don't know, Rob loaned me his ogre's army, so it was incredibly kind of Rob since I was flying.
Yeah, it was cool.
To bring the Marauders, so Rob was very generous, and it was a huge learning lesson for me. I clocked out. So first tournament game, totally
Yeah.
clocked out. That hurt. That sucked.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, Jordan, though, because I've never been to an. First of all, clocking out sucks. You're going to lose the game when you clock out. But I've never been to an event that actually dings the player points if you clock out. I mean, you're already losing the game. Typically,
yeah. Well, and what's interesting too is like I didn't realize that it docks you points, because there's a certain point where it's like, why would I do more? If there's 3 seconds on the clock and I get dinged for going to 0, I'm just going to say I do nothing. Like the second you hit the timer, I'm hitting the timer back to not even burn a second, essentially. So that was interesting. I totally would have done that, not that it, again, would change results, but just something that was a huge learning lesson, and also a moment of just like, I'm playing way too slow.
Right.
The biggest things that definitely happened in that tournament was I learned that being ensnared and hindered is not good for siege breakers. They will not kill what's in front of them if those two happen simultaneously against them. So huge learning lesson from that. I had a weird thing where when I had won a certain battle, I had not quite pivoted correctly where it led to a flank charge, and that really began the unwinding of the game. And so I ended 3-2, but walked away with a ton of learning lessons between clocking out, getting ensnared and hindered. Really good opening for the ogres. I felt pretty good about warlock placement and a few other items. You see the hunters way on the left there, and that became really dicey because I forget the unit, but essentially they were shooting at 18 inches, and it got to a point where it's like I either had to move forward and charge, or I was going to die from 6 rounds of shooting because there was a token there on the left. So, but yeah, really, really a lot of lessons learned round 1 of the tournament, right out the gate.
That's awesome. Let me scroll here. Let's see what we got. So this is a picture of my first round match with Jeff Franz. You can see basically over here. I should probably go over here. Over here is where all the tokens are. And then there was like one right here in the middle. And so I'm spent too much time over here, right? By the time I got over there, he had got me pretty good. But in game 2, I got to play my mortal enemy, Blake Schroed. This is the second time in 3 years that we've played this exact game. In other words, his Abyssal Dwarves and my Kingdoms of Halfmen. So, and just, I don't know, maybe history repeats itself, because in the first time we played, I had the game swing on some Snake Eyes, right? Where I basically took my Helm of the Drunken Ram unit off a hill. So he's basically Thunder Charge 4 with a giant into a unit of Lesser Obsidian Golems and Snake Eyes them, right? Because I mean, all those guys are wounding on 2s against defense 6, so 8 plus 2d6 from the giant and 16 attacks on 3s from the cav. And so that in that game, hit the middle, lost it, and then flank, and I'm done. In this game, and I think there might be another picture of it right here. Yeah. So in this game, over on the right flank, the same thing happened again. But I didn't Snake Eyes it, but I don't know what to say. I mean, the giant went in, the chariots went in, I did 7 wounds. It's like, I don't even know how you do 7 wounds when you have 8 plus 2d6 wounding, hitting on 4s, wounding on 2s, and 16 attacks hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s. Like, I don't know in a world where so long story short, they were flanked. The giant was flanked. But good news, Blake was being very generous and gave me a Snake Eyes. So it was a great game, but I should have mentioned, with Jeff Franz in the first game, I had 4 hordes of impalers, right? Yeah, that's what it's called. And then in this game, 4 hordes of Obsidian Golems. I'm like, oh my God, guys, come on. The good news is that I'm sure there's no way that I could play Defense 6 again. What would be the odds in game 3 that I would play again? There's just no way. But this game came down. Dylan, I think you came by the game, right? Near the end? right? And so it was super close. Basically, it was Blake's game to lose, or excuse me, it's Blake's game to win. He went for the win, needed some dice to go his way, and he would win. Instead, he didn't get the dice he needed, and it was a draw. But it was a hell of a game. I think we both maxed out on attrition. Like, I think we both killed. I mean, I had like 2 units left, and he had like 3 units left. So it was again though, stupid mistakes. I had this was Salt the Earth, I think, right, Dylan? I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is one that I actually could have won had I not been a muppet, and because I had a horde of the militia mob with 2 tokens with a giant what's it, the Cronius. No, well, his model is a Cronius and a greater elemental, stone elemental together, but it's the greater earth elemental. And I could have just popped the tokens, and then that puts me, I'm losing the tokens, but it means he doesn't have the 2 tokens. So it cost me the game, but it's all right. How about your round 2, Dylan?
I played Marshall Temple. So he was running his undead. And then, like we said, it was Salt the Earth. And the thing with his army is he is still using a werewolves battle group. So he's got 2 hordes, and he has 2 hero werewolves. And those guys they're super. They might as well be flyers. They're speed 9. They're nimble. And then of course the heroes are speed 9 nimble on 40 mil bases. So they're like, if you're not careful, those can be ping ponging in your battle line really, really fast. And so I kind of am forced into a denied flank, which is not really something that a scouting, shooting army really wants to do. You really want to jump out and really facilitate the center of the board and threaten objectives early on. But he had just the werewolves. They may only be crushing 1, but half my army's defense 3. So, but I was able to, because of the way the terrain was laid out, I was able to kind of zone one of his battle groups completely out of the game. I basically, it only cost me my Kindred Warrior regiment, basically. And so because of that, he didn't have enough firepower to chew through my tree herder and my 4 shambler hordes. And I was able to kind of just sweep around out of that denied flank into attacking some of the objectives that were in the center of the board that were had not been burned. So I was able to take that game.
Well, let's turn it over to our buddy Jordan. He had a game 2, right? We're still on game 2.
Yep. So Chris DeGros was my opponent. Incredibly kind individual. Really a lot of learning moments in that game with dealing with EOD and some of the surge and shambling stuff that can happen with flanks. Really great at helping me learn, like, hey, just FYI, if you leave that there, I can come into your side and do that. And, really help see, like, there's certain moments where I'm going to get to do what I want. Square bases are going to turn and walk away and then surge into things, and you're just going to deal with it. But really, really fun game in the sense of kind of out the gate again, I double charged I think it was his Revenant, his main unit of Revenants, and it actually evaporated. And he kind of looked at me like, that's not supposed to happen in one turn. And that's supposed to be around at least another round or 2. And but the big mistake that I made was as I'm deploying, I was focused on a couple other stuff. And I completely separated the warlocks, the 2 warlocks and Nom Nom, from their batteries of ogre hordes. And so the lightning bolt wasn't effective. And rather than just take a round loss of shooting, made a huge mistake, kept them on the other side of the board for, I think, 2 or 3 turns. It wasn't until like round 4 I tried to get them back to where they had their batteries and they could start doing the drain life stuff. So big, huge mistake. And I learned that the rest of the rounds, 3, 4, 5, definitely did not make that mistake again. But I think it hurt the survivability of some of those Siegebreaker hordes. But outside of that, too, it was really fun in that, what was it, Scorched Earth, or you said Salt the Earth for the round, where really try to make sure that you're balancing that idea of burning your own zones that you control. I definitely did not do that, and I should have, and that would have really helped me kind of control certain sides of the board. But the big dead dragon worm is wild, how it can just turn and go away. And so, but lots of fun, great game, incredibly kind opponent, and would absolutely get the chance to play. I think he's in Michigan now again, so have to hit him up when I go back out in Michigan.
So I just got pinged by my buddy Andy. He's at the Crossroads GT, and he goes, "Hey, I just played somebody named Jeff Trish. He beat me 4-2 at Dominate." I was like, he doesn't know who he is. I'm like, come on, bro. You don't know who Jeff. I mean, what do you? I would make the comment, what have you been playing for a year? And the answer is probably yes. But I'm like, come on, dude. So that's funny that he got to play Jeff Trace at Crossroads. I don't know if it was like just a pickup game or if it counted. I'm not sure, but it just makes me laugh. Well, in game 3, like I said, there's no way I'm going to have to play more Defense 6, right? I mean, how could I possibly play Defense 6 again? But I did. So I got to play the delightful Matthew Temple. Super nice guy, super cool army. And it's not exactly the prototypical ogre list that we would see, but it had all the tools. It had the 3 sergeants that shoot with elite for some reason. It has the 3 warlocks. It has the nom nom. It has 3 siege breaker hordes. It was exactly what I didn't want to see. And in that game, we were playing, I think we were playing Invade, I believe. And ultimately, I was actually in the game. I was crushing his army, but there's just too many scoring individuals or heroes in that list. And so I had a couple combats where they just came up short. I couldn't pop. I couldn't keep the momentum going. And he ended up crushing me like 7-2 or something in Invade. Sometimes you look up and turn 6 and you're like, oh crap, I'm gonna lose this game. Even though I'm killing all of his stuff and all he's got left is a bunch of characters, it's like it is what it is. So I don't know, Dylan, how'd your game 3 go?
Yeah, so I got to play Chris DeGrow game 3, and it was another not unlike my first game where it was really just a scrum in the middle. Because this was Invade, like we said, and he's got a lot of defense options. He's got a defense 6 monster hero. He's got a defense 5 horde of -24 revenants. They're -24 for reasons, I guess. Mummies. I mean, that -18 on that regiment, they're so tough, man. And what it came down to really is, I honestly, average dice versus average dice, I don't think I have the punch to get through the Empire Dust battle line, but I got the dice. I mean, I learned from my mistake in my first game, and I swung around a far flank with my nimble Knight regiment and busted the mummies wide open in one single charge. I mean, that's Elf Elite, right? It's just, it's gonna turn those averages in your favor. I had he made one really mistake moving his Revenant horde up too far. I had already softened it up with a little bit of that shooting. And so I think because I have a couple individuals there, I think I quad charged that and took it off the board. And that was like a regiment, mummies, and I mean that was 3, 6. It was like 6 or 7 unit strength that I took out in one go, in one turn there, like on turn 2 or 3. It was pretty early. So I was able to just kind of push as I was moving unit strength across. I was able to keep swinging it inwards towards the center where he had his giant, he had his worm. I was able to tie some things up over there. And so it was tough. I honestly wasn't expecting a win, but we pulled it through. We got that W.
How about you, Jordan? How'd your game 3 go?
Yeah, so Marshall Temple with his undead was my opponent in round 3. Like you mentioned, it was Invade. It had the fun chariot twist where the chariot had to pick up the flag and kind of dump it around at some point. And for me, what really helped was got the Warlocks back with their batteries, really focused down some shooting that took out some of his Revenant cavalry. But for me, he actually brought those werewolves a little too close and actually led to almost the whole ogre army in one go, just charging across the board. And obviously in a scenario where you want to be already across the half line, it brought me even closer. A lot of those charges actually went in my favor and things started to dissolve. And it really came down to trying to make sure that around he still had a Wolverine unit and one of the Wolverine heroes on the side of my flank. So I had to kind of start turning the Boomer Chariot around and start getting that shooting in to help reduce stuff. But stuff started just dissolving left and right. It was a really brutal battle. It might have been actually my most brutal battle as far as both sides just exchanging total losses. And really came down to just that board control and starting for me to push out towards each side. But really fun to face him dead. He got some really great shambling surge boosts that just put him in good places. But actually, it was my one win of the tournament, so walked away with 4-1. But great opponent. Was really fun to hear his Masters experience that him and his brother had. And really great round.
Yeah, Marshall and Matt are both super awesome guys, and huge fan of Marshall's creativity in his army. He's got that really cool chariot it's basically he took like a giant boulder and there's these zombies rolling it, but like they're like smushed on it. So like it's like they're rolling over zombies with it. And spoiler alert, it won best chariot, which 100% he needed to win. That was super cool. Super cool. So Saturday night we had while we're got this up, I'll maybe flash a few pictures, but we had a great time on Saturday night. We went to Lansing Brewery and and we do need to shout out Darius, right? That's how we pronounce it, right? Darius, I think. So amazing army. Like, and this is the guy that I met at Adepticon last year, and I walked up and said, "Oh, how cute! You got troll bloods in your army." He's like, "No, those are." Long story short, he took the new plastic Mantic ogres and painted them blue, just to give them a different look, and he uses them as snow trolls. They're based correctly and everything. And in this one, he has another proxy from a Mantic to a Mantic, which I think works really well for the aesthetic of the army. He has goblins as the ensnarers, so he has like goblin sharpsticks, but really pretty army. He won't buy off on it that he's a good painter. Like he was kind of like poo-pooing it. I was like, no, this is really good, dude. A very subtle, nice blending, so I don't know. I really like this army quite a bit.
Yeah, it as someone who has won some Mantic Paint awards and really puts a lot of passion into painting it. It definitely hurt my heart a little bit that he didn't walk away with best painted. But really, for those who he's put images of the army on various Mantic pages. I think it's on the Kings of War Fanatics page. So definitely go look for his posted content in there. You can look at it for hours. I mean, the detail that you see in the cameras is even more present in person. Just blown away. Darius should be very, very proud of this army.
Yeah, it was awesome. So we went to Lansing Brewery. We had a great time. We got to watch Michigan beat USC. It was a lot of fun, and the food was good. The beer was good. The camaraderie was good. We had a copy of Clash of Kings 2025, that Mantic had given Blake, and so we were able to kind of look at that and get a little hype going for the Clash of Kings, which I know I'm excited about. Clash of Kings 2025. I'm like, this is probably, I've seen the book. This is probably one of the coolest books in a long time. So the hype is real for me. And we got lots of content coming out talking about the book. We've done a couple new things where we've actually got a player that kind of coming back out of retirement. We kind of gauge, like, what do you want from the book before he's even seen the book, and then kind of work with that person and they, kind of get their thoughts on an initial look at the book. And I think everybody that's seen it has been very hyped about it. And you know what? As Dylan would say, the command dice are cool, and the sky is not falling. So I'm really, really excited about that as well. So, well, game 3 we rock up, and I am playing. Who am I playing? I'm playing Marshall Temple, and I feel bad for him because he didn't want to play my army, but he was supposed to play his brother, and so they were like, you know what? We'll move you around. Like I was supposed to play Grace and Grace Patterson, and Matt was supposed to play Marshall, and they play all the time. So Mike was like, "Hey, you mind?" I was like, "No, I don't mind." I think Marshall minded when we were done because so to this point I am 2 losses and a draw, and I can honestly say like the artillery at this point had done nothing. But Marshall's list, you mentioned it's got the werewolves, right? And it's got a couple alphas, but it has 2 Soul Reaver infantry units, but like it also has like a few troops of waves. It has a horde of whites. Those are things that do not want to see phalanx, right? They don't want, and they definitely don't want to see pike because they're -2 to hit. So this, and I can't remember what scenario did we play Dylan in round 4? Control, yeah. So I mean, I have 31 unit strength. I'm lined up, and I'll be honest with you, the dice were hot, and I just shot them, and like we're wavering like werewolves on turn 1 and turn 2, and it was now I actually think this is the crazier part. He had 5 snake eyes in the game.
Oh.
Five, like, and yeah, you could say that some of them weren't important. Some of them were, right? Like he has a giant dead to rights. He hits him in the flank with werewolves. He does like 30 wounds to him, or maybe not 30 wounds, but a lot, right? And he snake eyes it. So I don't know. It was, I mean, this is the one little snippet that kind of showcases the whole game. I'm like, well, I don't have any targets. Like I said that, like literally, like he had done a good job of hiding everything. He's like, well, I have my necromancer. Why don't you shoot the necromancer in the woods? And the artillery took it off. I'm like, I need like cover, individual, stealthy, right? Because he had the spell, and I'm like, forget it. I was like, at that point, I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. So I felt terrible, but it is what it is. We've had, to be fair though, we've had a couple of we've had a lot of fun games. So, and I think if he was on the show, I think he would probably lament just the undead army is kind of in a bad spot, right? It's kind of like one of those original armies that kind of been left behind. Yes, they have a couple tools, but they don't feel like they're at the same level as like ogres, for example, or Twilight Kin or Northern Alliance. And so hopefully at some point we get some undead love. That's the hope. Dylan, how about you? Game 4.
So I played Blake.
Oh, I think we have a picture of that. Where we go? I know we have a picture of it. Yeah, look at this. This right here is the face of determination. This is, I'm kicking your ass, Blake. I'm coming. And Blake's just like, he's got that like look that your dad gives you. He's like, he's giving you the look as Dylan is just like taking it too far against his dad, So
yeah, that was me one shot and some infantry that I should not have one shot. But yeah, so this was another kind of denied flank situation, which I do like doing denied flank on control because I like to fight. I like to fight for 4 zones on the depth. So so I know exactly where I deploy. I don't care how my opponent deploys in a situation like control. I know exactly what 4 zones I'm fighting for at the very start of the game. So that's what I did. I deployed. He deployed some of his thicker stuff on the from that picture. It'd be the left-hand side. So he most of his defense 6 was on that far side. So that's where I had my tree herder and my shamblers. And the rest of it, you can kind of see it just I kind of swept around. I was shooting. And I did have some hot dice. I shot his
Well,
greater.
you say hot, but like this is supposed to be Sylvan Camp, but I see snow.
I mean,
Are you pulling a Robert Brandon? Are you playing like another army as a count as? What are you doing here?
no, this is all. They're all good. It's
But
what
wait, did you? So you're saying you built this as Sylvan Can, or you're telling me you never played this as something else before?
I may or may not have played.
Yeah. This guy,
Northern
this guy,
Alliance.
this guy, Jordan. This guy is so hardcore. He doesn't care. He doesn't even consider his opponent's feelings. He just brings the filth every time. Shame.
But no, I was able to shoot off a greater Earth Elemental or Obsidian Golem in on
With
turn
what?
2. Exactly.
With Glade Stalkers?
Exactly.
Come on.
Yeah, it just like
You don't have no piercing, bro.
the first turn. I was like hitting with everything. I did like 3 wounds. It came to his first turn, and he failed all his heal. He had 1 character that could heal. He didn't get a single success. So it came back to me, and it still had 3 wounds on it. I was like, well, this is my chance. I was like, if I can take this thing off, I can start sweeping around. And it's early enough in the game where I can really push for the center of the board. And I went from 3 wounds to snake eyes. Like, it was like I hit with everything again and wound. It was crazy. He felt real good about it. But anyway, yeah, I was just able to. But what affected the game, I feel like more than that, was the Wilt Father. Cloak of Death over multiple turns is so good. I have forgotten how good that was. And really, I think that's what allowed me to win the game, because I was able to kind of stop up. You can see right there, that's multiple hordes of Obsidian Golems coming from my center zone. And I was able to get in there and just whittle them down. And then that last turn, I was able to kind of take most of that.
Is this an Elven King right here trying to be all big and brave, stopping them up?
Yeah, did he last a turn? I don't think he lasted a turn. He went in there and he did a couple.
He did his job though.
He did his job. Yeah, like you know. But yeah, I was able to take that game. It was a pretty bloody game. But it's funny. I mean, we're gonna find out here in a second. But your day 1 was all defense 6, and my day 2 is starting out pretty nice on that defense 6.
Yeah. So let's turn it over to Jordan. How'd your beginning of day 2 go for you?
Day 2 was rough for a new player. Faced Kara Brown with her Trident Realms army. Really, this is where the game of Angles started to really show itself to me, as far as where things are, how things happen. Naiads for the second, that ensnare failed me again. Did a combined charge, just ate it. And you'll see the River Guard there on the left in the photo. Total noob moment. I left Nom Nom just in range, just barely in sight, and it just allowed them to just come flying in. And he was just evaporated, and things just completely unfolded from there at that moment. On the right-hand side, you can see I was actually holding down both the Kraken and 2 of the smaller units on the right, with both hordes of hunters and the chariot. And that actually that started helping me see, kind of a standoff in many ways of like how things can be held back, and it can play in the ogre's favor, and it doesn't have to always be, hey, turn 2, things are smashing together whether we like it or not. And so again, especially the angles in this game, I felt like the biggest things that I did well would be, again, that right flank where I was kind of slowing things down. I was tying up the Kraken, but a lot of points on my end too. I think the hunters are 205, 220 a pop, and then the chariots some 150 points as well. So not sure it paid off, but the beauty at the end was the chariot started to come around. It led to potentially threatening that center where Kara had to keep a few things back and not just put it all in my deployment zone. But I loved facing Trident Realms the first time I'd even faced them. So many tools in the toolbox, so many different, the regen, the other things that they bring to the table. I think for new players, especially some of the newer models that are out for them, really fun army, and really opened my eyes to just, again, starting to see some of the flavor of other armies, but also saying, hey, pick an army that you think is flavorful, because the game is far beyond just what your army can do. So,
yeah. Well, let's mix it up. We'll go with Dylan this time for game 5. You're doing pretty good. You're what, 3-1, I guess, at this point. So, who'd you play?
So I got matched up with Jesse Berglund. So
Woo, you got some Twilight Kin.
Yeah,
he's gonna eat you up. Twilight Kin are real good.
It was a rough day. I've barely even looked at their list since their last update, much less played against them. And I'll be honest, I didn't know what to do. This is not an exaggeration. I haven't felt like this since I started playing the game in 2015. Like, I did not know what to do at all. And so, honestly, there's not a lot I can say about the game except it was dominate, and I knew where his units were going to be. And so I kind of just played, facilitated around the dominate zone and pushed stuff in whenever I had the opportunity and rolled dice. And, one thing did go in my favor on turn 1. Jesse doesn't do a lot of the hex and stuff with crones, but he does play into the impalers. So he had 3 regiments and 3 hordes, and he likes the skiffs. He likes the skiff regiments, and so I was able to, with my shooting, I was able to take off a regiment in cover, and so that kind of, from turn 1, that kind of, I could tell it kind of made him feel like he was on the back foot, where he needed to make some decisions. And like he even said in our game, he's like, "Oh man, you really got me in a pickle." And I was just there, I was just doing stuff. Like I did not really, I honestly didn't deserve to win that game. And it came down to, I mean, it was literally what Kings is designed for. It came down to that peace trade, that movement, the movement phase and the peace trade at the very end of the game. And I was able to take it by a couple of unit strength.
Well, let's throw it over to Jordan. Who'd you play in the last round?
Yeah, so I played Felix Castro. Incredible individual, super fun to play against, and he actually won the Sportsman Award for Kings of War. And this was the second. That second day was rough for me. It really was, as a newer player coming in. My previous round with Kara, it just felt like I perfectly walked into every trap that she had set. And so, like Dylan had mentioned, it was dominate, and I went very aggressive with the ogres. Similar to with the Martial game, Martial Temple with the undead, just charged everything forward, and a few risks definitely didn't pay off. And it was just proof at that point. The light bulb, as I mentioned earlier, was starting to go off. The mind really seeing the game of where this is a 6-turn game and possibly even a 7-turn game, and really just charging forward to smash into things and get things moving forward is not always the best strategy. And so it just, again, I felt like I ran right into Felix's trap. With the pack hunters are so effective in both shooting and in combat, and I felt like, I don't want to lose units to shooting. There's a reason ogres are strength 6 in the front with the big shields. They can take shooting, they can take other things and survive the round. And so it was really that big learning lesson of just watching this mastermind just watch my army evaporate. And I think that was actually the most losses, I had taken, I think it was over 2,000 points in losses to my army. And I think I was lucky to kill 2 units of Felix's. And so that was just this eye-opening moment of like, holy smokes, like, you know, trying to just be humble at that moment and just not just feel like you were just turned over and thrown out of the GT at that point from bad play. But really that moment where you realize again, Kings is that 6-turn game, and it's really, you are so much better off standing off and repositioning things or backing up's the thing. I experimented with that even a couple times where I'm like, you know what, let's get out of the charge range. I don't want that to happen. And so really at that moment, realizing, you know, all of it starting to come together, all the different games, all the different armies. And I actually was really excited to play against Felix because I had been considering doing either a Northern Alliance or Varangur army and really wanted to play against it to watch all those elements begin to play together. And it was just fun to watch at that point. You didn't even care that units were just being wiped off the table because you're like, I just love watching Northern Alliance go to work. So
that's awesome. That's super awesome. Well, I got to play in game 5, like a dream matchup for me in terms of just a great person. It was Kara Brown, who you played earlier in the event, and Kara is old guard like me. So we have been playing this game since first edition. We were playing over 10 years ago at Adepticon, and she had stepped away from the game a little bit. She had some more stuff in her life, and it was really awesome to have her back. We've missed her for a little while, and so we're really, really, really excited to have her back. And I don't know how excited she was to see me in Dominate. And I actually I had to find the pictures because it was, you know, Dominate. I always make a joke. It's a bullseye, right? I know where you need you know, the person knows where you need to be. And so that's what went down. Basically, she had Trident Realms, which for the most part is pretty squishy, right? And I mean, there's some stealthy with the Thule, there's some defense 6 with the Gigas, but it was gonna be hard. It was gonna be hard for her because I have a little bit of shooting. I mean, I have the four artillery pieces, right? But then I also have, you know, I have a fair amount of phalanx, and I have 31 unit strength, right? So it's gonna, you know, in a Dominate, it's gonna be difficult. And so she did a great job. I would say the terrain was a little wonky in the sense that it was a pretty wide. I mean, I guess in Dominate you should have like pretty wide open, but I don't know. I almost wanted to like push a hill or something over to give her some more cover. But yeah, it was you know, she lined up over there, and her army list had, you know, a couple Thule. I'm looking at her list over here. She had a couple troops of Thule. She had I guess that's a Knucker? No, that's a Kraken. The Kraken's the Titan, right, Dylan? Yeah, I think so. And then she had a horde of the Worm Riders. She had 2 hordes of Gigas. She had a couple Tidal Swarm regiments. She had a regiment of the River Guard. She had, and then she had like a Knucker and a couple other characters. And you know, you can see how it's deployed, right? So I'm like literally the entire table. I'm Eric Schroberging this thing. Like I am gonna spread my army out. Obviously, you know, half the unit strength is right there on the circle, but you can see all the way over here on the left and right. I mean, I have a lot of stuff. And it, you know, this was her early game. This was her, I guess it would have been her right flank, but we're over on my left side. And let's see. And then this is her over on the right. And she's got, you know, the Knucker and the little Thule Mythican, I think, with wings character. But I have a giant and a thing over there. And so she got a little bit of bad luck. She did finally get the giant, and she snake eyes it. So that kind of screwed things up. But look at this scrum in the middle. I mean, we've got a giant. We've got 2 hordes of militia mob. We have a foot guard on the hill. We have pike, and then we have, what you can't see is we have cavalry, foot guard, like all ready to go, smashing in. And this is the one time I remember the chariot, and I said, you know what would be really good here? Phalanx would be really good here because she's about to hit me with those Worm Riders. So, but that being said, she still outplayed me in the sense that she got that cheeky chariot of hers into the flank of those Phalanx horde, and she did bad things to me, right? I don't know what 12 attacks or something, but that's pretty substantial on the side. So yeah, it was a great game. It was so that was the super bloody. Like and there were turns where I think she was getting irritated. I was ready for her to throwing stuff at me because like I would roll and it'd be like hit, and I took off a fair amount of her stuff, and at the end of the game, it was I had a lot of unit strength, so it was tough for her to grind through. But she played a hell of a game, and like I said, I'm really happy to have Kara back in the fold and playing with us. It was a super lot of fun. With that though, we should probably talk about how we kind of closed out. So huge shout out to Nate Johnson with his dwarves, and we'll share his list in a minute because it's a surprising list. It's not like what won Clash of Kings UK, and then Steve De La Garza came in second, but did get best general. And you guys, I don't know if there's ever been a more cautionary tale. Let's just say it the way it is. He lost the event by 1 point. There were bonus points available if you brought printed lists. Like if you brought your list for your printed, so for your opponent to play. Had Steven done that, he would have won the tournament. Now, he obviously didn't know that going in that he was going to lose by 1 point, or he probably would have brought the list. But I don't know. I just, man, I don't know if I recover for something like that. I just that's so devastating. It is what it is. And Dylan, congratulations to you with third place. Not best general though. That's what you set the bar so high last time, and you did have the most attrition, but only 90 points. I'm just like, I mean, you had that really killy Sylvankin army. I'm a little disappointed in you, if I'm being honest.
Killy.
Yeah.
I guess it's a little killy, but I don't know. It was good. I'll take third.
Yeah, I mean, third out of 16 players is pretty good. And then, shout out to Kyle and Jeff and Chris DeGrow. Chris DeGrow is another one we hadn't seen in the scene for a little while. So it was great to get Chris back. And I know he was kind of probably felt he was a little rusty. He was kicking the butt off the boots, if you will. And ironically, I finished 8th, right in the middle of the pack as a good countercharger should. And then, Jordan, all the way down at the bottom. But we're going to say that's because you didn't know how to play ogres. You didn't have a lot of experience with ogres. That's what we're going to say. We're going to say absolutely that's what caused you. But to be fair, though, you actually technically tied with Blake, but Blake beat you on attrition. So, Blake probably really feels like the 16th place player. I mean, considering the fact that, Blake, by the way, Blake was sort of at times like the quasi ringer army, but who brings 4 hordes to defend 6 is the ringer army?
He's there to deliver L's.
Yeah, Blake. Maybe that's why we only had 60 players, because I knew Blake was going to show up with his D6. But yeah, huge shout out to Grace Patterson. She did win best. She won both best appearance and player's choice. You already mentioned Felix. Felix is the sports wonderkin, man. Just a great guy. Jesse Berglund won the countercharger, which is awesome. Steven De La Garza got best general. We talked about Nate. Favorite chariot, Marshall. And Jordan got the Dice Hate Me Award. So did he give you new dice? Is that what he gave you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, green dice. They have a little Michigan GT logo on it. I got a little dice trophy award, so I'll have to post that picture when this launches. But yeah, incredible event overall. And I would say this, it's really interesting. So, Tyler has been working on me for a while. He's like, we got to get you a tournament. I'm not really a tournament focused player historically. I've run into so many situations where you go to a tournament and the play's not fun. It's just not a fun experience because your opponents are just either aggressive or they don't want to be talkative. They're not there to have fun. They're there to win. Yeah. And so really reluctant to do any tournaments. And so I was really happy that it worked out where I could go see family, go to the tournament. But I would say this, I am at minimum now tournament neutral. And, so Tyler achieved something in the sense that it was really fun to watch this community. Like there was two times in the event hall where it felt like hands were going to get thrown over there with the Warhammer players.
It was pretty rough on the AOS because the 40K guys were in another. The 40K crowd was in another event, like another hall across the way. But yeah, the AOS guys, they were like, look, man, if you're gonna, I don't know how to say this, but if you're coming to blows over playing with toys, like you have something wrong with you, man. Like
grow up.
It's not that important in life.
Yeah,
it's not
and like too, when the event ended, they scattered like the four winds. No one was hanging around and talking for the most part, and so to get there and see the help that players were willing to provide, even though it was a tournament, to see people actually hanging out and talking, and everyone going to the restaurant at the end of Saturday to go talk about Clash 25. It just really was proof to all the things Tyler had been telling me about how amazing the Kings community is. They're here to grow. They're here to help everyone be better. And also at the end of the day, like, it's not do or die based on who wins the tournament. I mean, the Nate had a really cool story where it was 2 years ago, he took the same position that I did. He took last in the tournament. And now he's 2 years later and he won. It doesn't even matter the fact that it was, you could say, because Steven hadn't brought his list. It's fine. Let's say he got second. In 2 years, that kind of turnaround is incredible at the end of the day. So really congrats to Nate. And
100%.
Awesome.
There's I love Kings of War because we have those stories. Luke Frazier goes to Seattle, his home Masters, and comes in last place, and then next year comes up to Omaha and wins it. It's like, okay, Cinderella stories. So let's shout out to Nate. He did win it. What's interesting is he went 3 wins, a loss, and a draw, I believe. Is that right, Dylan? I'm pretty sure that's what he did.
Yep.
And I think Steven De La Garza went 4-1, maybe. We both. You and him both were 4-1.
He had me by 5 battle points.
Yeah, and so the problem for Steven was paint. Paint was I think Nate had him by 12 points in paint, so it was enough to swing, even though he had like paint and sports, just a slight bump in sports was really enough to get him 1 point more. But Dylan, do you want to take us through his list? I've got it up here.
So we have this is a pretty interesting list.
It's different, man. When I saw it, I was like, I've never seen a list like this that would win. I mean, we'll talk about that where I think it's got some bad matchups, but maybe talk us through it.
So he's got a horde of shield breakers. He has 2 hordes of iron wash rifles, 2 organ guns, a flame belcher. This is the part I like about his list. He has 3 steel behemoths. I'm a nut for monsters. I love monsters, and even though they're chariots, they're still really cool. He has a stone priest. The stone priest, I'm not sure. We talked about it. Blessing of the Gods works on, if you're elite, it works on unique stuff, right? Or doesn't?
I don't know. It never comes up.
I should have looked that up because I was curious about that the other day.
Yeah.
Garrick Heavy Hand and a dwarf on Large Beast. Another really cool defense 6 monster. 12 units and only 16 unit strength.
Yeah, it's pretty low. But he did what he had to do to win the game, win the tournament, which is cool, right? Like, even if he didn't have the perfect list, he had the perfect list for that event. And he was able to navigate what, you can only play who they put in front of you. So I just, going back to his list, I mean, the organ guns and the iron watch, you typically don't see it because, I mean, I don't know if he didn't have to play a Night Stalker or a Twilight Kin player, but that makes you have a bad day when you're hitting on 5s, now it goes to 6s, right? And God forbid you move, and then it's half the tax on 6s.
I mean, actually, I don't think, and it goes back to what you just said about you can only play what's put in front of you.
Yeah.
I don't think the stealthy aura bothers him much against the flavor of Twilight Kin that was at the event. Because he actually did play Jesse and beat him. Mm-hmm. He was shooting on 6s, but he's got 40 attacks at piercing too. And those, being an ogre player, 17 nerve, when you're getting a lot of piercing, 17 nerve goes away pretty quick. So, but yeah, to that point, you can only, you take a list to an event and you get dice rolls and matchups and decisions on the table, and those 3 things combined is what win the event.
Yeah, and he played Marshall Temple and the Undead in the first round. He played Grace Patterson and Order of the Green Lady, I believe, in round 2. And then he drew against Darius with the Northern Alliance in round 3. And then in round 4, he got a win on Jesse with the Twilight Kins, which, what do you have, 5 hordes of Impalers? I can't remember.
He had 3 hordes and 3
No,
regiments.
3 hordes and 3 regiments. That's right. So 6
Yeah.
units. Pretty good. And then in his last game, he lost his. That's got to be the really the ultimate kick in the balls, though, that Steven beat him and then lost by a point. Steven, you got to beat him better. You got to beat him one. You took your foot off the brake. But Steven was rocking Rordia, so it was good to see Rordia up there. We hadn't seen that in a long time. So, but yeah, shout out to Nate. It's a cool army if you haven't seen it. A lot of like bar type, drinking and stuff. It's really it's a really cool themed dwarf list. So huge shout out to them. But I don't know, it was a great event, all around. And Dylan, we had a great time Sunday night. We had some folks came over and we played we played the Walking Dead dice game incorrectly, for a little while. We didn't realize we were having a good time, and then somebody pointed out, well, actually, you're not really playing it right.
We're running out of cards for some reason.
Right, and also we learned that Arkansas doesn't hear well, so we gave him the rules for Skull, and he kind of didn't really do a great job with that. So, but yeah, it was a great time. It was a lot of fun. We had some spaghetti, and we hung out. We had a little, camaraderie, and I know Jordan, you got to go back with your family and do, because that's awesome that your sister and brother-in-law live in town, or I guess it's Fowlerville, but not far from Lansing.
Yep.
So you're able to make it a family trip with all, and bless you for bringing all the kids, man. I mean, that's a lot of work, I imagine,
Very
on an
grateful to
airplane.
my wife. Yeah, and
Yeah.
the event was easy in this sense. Like both Saturday and Sunday, I was able to get back for bedtime, so that's awesome. And Friday night, I was playing Firefight late, so that was the one night that the wife had to put all the kids down. So that, I would say that if you're bringing family along, I think most tournaments operate that way. We're day one, you're over by 6 at the latest. So
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to turn it into vacation. It worked out all right. It was fine to get away for a little bit, but yeah, tons of fun.
Yeah. If anybody out there that's curious about Michigan GT, it'll happen again in the fall next year. Just reach out to me, Dylan, Jordan. We're happy to chat your ear off about it. But also, if you want to know where to stay, we'll give you all the details. And really, I would say if you're like Jordan and you kind of like maybe tournaments aren't really your thing, this is a pretty good one to go to. They really do a good job of taking the edge off a little bit. It's not quite as hardcore as some of the other bigger tournaments, like Adepticon, for example, or Best of the Rest. So it's a fun tournament, and there's a lot of good hobby there. Sportsmanship is overflowing. And, Jordan, you said it best. Like, we really do spend a lot of time together. I know some people had to cut out, but like Saturday night was so much fun. We went to the brewery. We we're chatting about we're looking at the new book and we're chatting about it, and we're hearing the Twilight Kin players upset with some of the changes. That's okay. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. I still have faith in that army, even if Jeremy doesn't when he listens to this. But yeah. So I don't know, guys. Do you guys want final thoughts? Jordan, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you've been hesitant about a tournament, go. Tons of fun, incredible community. I mean, this is what we're driving, and the more people we can get brought in, the more people who are taking the game seriously. I mean, it gets exposure. People were walking by, people were asking what it was, and this is how you get it out to your community. So again, if you're on the fence or you haven't been going to tournaments, definitely go. Really, really enjoyed it. Enjoyed the community, and looking forward to more.
It helps when I don't mute myself. But Dylan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo most of that. I've, gone to a lot of tournaments before. I mean, really just getting to your first one. If you're looking to go to a tournament for the first time, avoid the big cons like Adepticon, stuff like that. Go to a regular event, go to Kings of Memphis, go to, Lady of the Lake, go to Bug Eater, get out to those ones that are promoted on their camaraderie and their, Saturday night hangouts. They're camping in the backyard. They're, things like that where, because that's going to give you the real taste of Kings of War. That's what Kings of War is about. For most of us is the play experience and, the camaraderie in the community.
Well said. Yeah, well said. Well, I think that's, guys, I don't think there's any, I think we've been at this for a couple hours. I think that's going to do us tonight. You guys got anything else? Just as a reminder, if you have any hobby topic episode suggestions, reach out to Jordan. He'll get the ball rolling. We had a great episode that went out today about paint ranges. I gave it a listen. It's been a while. So, Jeremy likes to take a long time to edit. So it was like 6 weeks ago. So I was like, wait, was I? So it did throw me off a little bit. It kind of felt like a little quantum leap action there. But yeah, it was a really fun episode to listen to. And I hope I've already noticed on the Facebook group that we've gotten some good feedback about it. So I think that's the kind of stuff we want to do, but there's no point of doing it if you're not going to, if it's not going to be helpful. So tell us, what are the things you want us to talk about? Paintbrushes, airbrushes, whatever. And I know, Jordan, we've got an episode coming up on bases at some point here in the near future.
We do.
We want to talk about bases. And we've got another painter named Mark Schramm from, I met him at Nova. Very, very high-end painter. And he's going to give us an opportunity to really chat about, how different games impact his hobby. So he was a very hardcore AOS player and has now kind of converted over to Kings of War, but, still has a lot of the GW models and just get an understanding of that change. How is that opening it up, right? How is that changing? What's the impact on his hobby? So I'm really excited to get his take on that too. So we do have an episode with Dylan that'll drop at some point. There's some spoilers in there, so we're gonna make sure we clear it with Mantic and make sure that everything is copacetic there. But we do have that, and listen to some of the stuff we recorded, Dylan. There's a really good episode on spam that I think it's going to grow. So we had a clip on spam, people's thoughts on spam from the U.S. Masters. So like Adam Ballard and folks, they have a little discussion about it. Then me and you have some, and we've got other people contributing. So it's like this. It's just like spam. It's just growing and growing and growing. It's we made it with 4 or 5 little clips. So I'm excited for that to hit the waves. And next Wednesday we have the next fireside chat going out. It's the one that had the controversial topic of proxies, right? So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then next Friday, finally getting out an episode that we recorded at U.S. Masters with Jeff and Andy. They were 2 new rookies to the event. And, on the way down, or on the way over, I should say, we really spent some time on a little bit about them as players. What's their expectations for their first Masters? And then, okay, on the way back, what happened? How did it go? What do you think? And it's like, let me just tell you this right now, though. If you're not into 3 hours of very, very dense conversation by two huge gaming nerds, it probably is not for you. But if you're into high level discussion about the intricacies of the pillage scenario, it might be for you. So sometimes we go a little off rails and go a little deep down the hole, and that's one of them. So that's why we're glad we have the hobby ones to bring me back into sanity. It's like, oh man, geez. So I don't know, guys. Anything else?
I don't have.
All right. Well, all right, Dylan, you want to take us out?
Yeah. So,
he's gonna mess it up, Jordan. He doesn't even know how to do it. But go ahead, Dylan. Go ahead. Take it out.
Go ahead, Dylan. You got it.
Since we're live, let's just have 2 or 3 takes, right?
Right. Yeah.
Just remember, keep on countercharging.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.